The NHL awards have been given out. We've got all the winners and analysis for that. And draft day is just one day away. We have some fearless predictions, all this and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. I am Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders, and with me every Friday is my co-host Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. Happy Friday, Rachel.
It was a pretty, I would say, expected results to these awards, right, Gil?
Yeah, more or less. I think this is what we were expecting. And you know what? You like the occasional surprise, but you want the most deserving people to win. And I think in most instances here, that is more or less what we got.
Yeah, I think so. Nathan MacKinnon, of course, getting both the Ted Lindsay and the Hart trophies. So people inside hockey love him. People outside of hockey love him. It was well-deserved, though, because, you know, he was near the top of the charts with all of the scoring stats this season and was a huge part of the Colorado Avalanche success during the regular season.
No doubt about it. He really was almost in a class by himself at times this year. You look at those numbers, it's hard to ignore. And I prefer and truly do like when you have the Hart Trophy and the Lindsay Award won by the same person. It puts a certain amount of certainty to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think that it just makes sense. And I think it was the right way to go.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. And congratulations, obviously, to Nathan MacKinnon for those two well-deserved awards. Turning to goaltenders, the Vezina, no big surprise there either. Winnipeg's Connor Hellebuck winning the award. And he has been at or near the top now for how many years?
It just seems like every year he's in
He's in contention. He's a finalist or a winner. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it must be so challenging. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's had a tremendous career. He's one of the most incredible goaltenders to watch. He has had a very difficult, you know, burden to shoulder for many years with the Winnipeg Jets in terms of facing a ton of shots. He's always up to the challenge. And yet, like, he just doesn't have a team that gets him beyond that. And you have to think there has to be like a little bit of bittersweetness to all this.
Yeah, you don't want to get the feeling you're winning the Vezina in spite of your teammates. Right? You know, he does carry that team to a large extent and means so much to their success. But certainly, you know, in my mind, just well-deserved. Like I said, he is in contention seemingly every year. And congratulations to Hellebuck for winning. The Norris Trophy, turning our attention to defensemen. Will this get renamed the Hughes Family Trophy at some point?
Well, you know, it's possible, I guess. But it is good to see Quinn Hughes win this one. Well-deserved. I think that, you know, the Canucks were such a surprising team this season, and Quinn Hughes was such a huge part of it. And, you know, despite how good he is, a lot of the Hughes attention was in New Jersey simply because there's two of them. And the fact that Quinn was able to have such a tremendous season. And, you know, I think Roman Josi got a lot of votes, but it wasn't close in terms of the first place vote at all. You know, it was like 172 first place votes for Quinn Hughes and 12 for Roman Josi. So it was like very clear amongst voters that this was the way they wanted to go.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, Roman Josi was deserving of being a finalist. He certainly had an outstanding year. but he was sort of the consensus number 2. And,
Yep.
In my mind, Quinn Hughes definitely deserved that Norris trophy this year. And the Calder trophy, such a surprise. I think,
Oh, I am shocked.
everybody knew where we were going with this. And, hard to argue with Connor Bedard getting the award, even though he did miss, a fairly significant number of games due to injury.
Yeah, and that's probably why Brock Faber got 42 first place votes, right?
Yeah.
Which is not nothing. This isn't a landslide. I mean, it's a huge margin here, but I think the fact that Brock Faber got as many as 42 first place votes has something to do with the time missed. But I do have to mention that Tyson Forster came in 7th and Sam Urson came in 10th in the voting here. So Flyers new kids were not left out of the conversation entirely, but I do think that it was a pretty representative vote of the options there, with Luke Hughes coming in 3rd, Kochetkov coming in 4th, and Logan Cooley coming in 5th. I honestly, I can't argue with that.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult to argue with that. And I really think the voters got it right across the board this year. And, it's encouraging when you see that. I mean, controversy is good too, but I like it when the voters are, in my mind, I'm not angry or frustrated or, saying, how did they vote for this guy? Most of these votes really do make sense.
Yep, I think so as well.
And, there were a number of awards that were already announced a little bit earlier. You had the Masterton Trophy going to Connor Ingram, formerly the Arizona Coyotes, now of the Utah Hockey Club. We know that Alexander Barkov again wins the Selke Trophy. Your thoughts about some of these awards that were previously announced?
Again, makes total sense. You don't really discuss the Masterton. Everybody is well deserved there. Barkov is a no-brainer for the Selke. And I think winning a Stanley Cup was just an extra icing on the cake of that award, as he showed in the playoffs, even though this is a regular season award. So I think all the skaters were awarded appropriately.
Now, is Rick Tocchet, who won the Jack Adams Award, there's sort of like a jinx attached to it. How do you feel about that one?
I think that's fine. I think it makes sense considering the expectations of the Canucks season going into the season versus how it turned out. I think Rick Tocchet did a tremendous job with this team.
Got to agree there. And I have to give a shout out to Islanders captain Anders Lee winning the King Clancy Award for what he did in the community. Now, the NHL also announcing the first and second team all-star rosters and announcing as well the all-rookie team. First team all-stars, Nathan MacKinnon at center, Artemi Panarin at left wing, Nikita Kucherov at right wing. The defensemen are Roman Josi and Quinn Hughes, and Connor Hellebuck is the goalie. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It is weird. Like, I think you think Kucherov and Panarin, both of them had tremendous seasons, right? And again, you got to put yourself in regular season mode to answer these. And I think they're well deserved. It just feels like the two of them were so like out of the conversation toward the tail end of the playoffs that you're like, oh, right, these guys are great hockey players and they had great seasons.
You kind of forget, yeah.
You kind of forget. But second it is well deserved.
Second team, Connor McDavid is the center. Philip Forsberg on the left wing. David Pasternak on the right. Cale Makar and Adam Fox on defense. And Thatcher Demko getting the second team all-star nod in goal.
Yep. The bridesmaid team, as they say. And I think, it's interesting having Connor McDavid as the second team all-star here when he just won the Conn Smythe, but again, regular season.
Yes.
I think
that regular season and to say that he was the second best center in hockey this year, And that, could almost be considered an off year for him. And this was not.
I know.
I know. No doubt. All rookie team: Logan Cooley, Connor Bedard, and Marco Rossi are the forwards. Brock Faber and Luke Hughes on the blue line, and Peter Kochetkov is the all rookie goalie. I know you were a little disappointed in some of the voting, but your thoughts?
I mean, it makes sense. I'm not going to argue with it, but I would have liked to see Sam Ersson or Tyson Forster crack this, but when push comes to shove, like, they don't belong there. I do know that, but good to see Tyson Forster get some of the votes there, and Sam Ersson as well.
Yeah, good to see that. And again, I think the voters more or less got it right. I like also the fact that they just do forwards as opposed to trying to slot in a center and a left wing and a right wing for the all rookie team. You want the best players represented, and I think that's the best way to do it. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We have our draft predictions as the draft is coming up tonight and on Saturday, plus some rule changes that were made around the league. We've got all that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
So the NHL Draft starts tonight with round one. It'll finish up on Saturday. How are you feeling heading into this draft? This is a different kind of a year.
Yeah, it's really interesting because last year in the first round, there were no trades at all. And I feel like there's more rumblings about trades this year than there were last year. And I just think that the potential is much higher, but it could end up to be none. And it's hard to say, right?
It is hard. I mean, we've already seen some teams make moves, and we've seen some teams, indicate, hey, we're open to trading our first round pick. So will teams take them up on it? How it seems like the top 10 or 12 spots are in one class, and then there is a bit of a drop off. So and I get the feeling that a lot of teams have different players in different spots after the first few picks on their board. So there is a lot of maneuvering going on. And I think cap space is also going to be part of a lot of these deals.
Yeah, I think so. And, there's been rumblings about Danny Briere trying to move the Flyers up to the Ottawa Senators spot. But now that's kind of iffy because they had that Ullmark trade. They only have one pick left in the first round. And are they going to be willing to move that pick, even if it's just to move down a few spots? I don't know. And then, they supposedly attempted to get the number 4 pick from Columbus, but no deal so far as of recording here. Like, I feel like the machinations are there, but will anybody actually pull the trigger on these deals?
And what was it? Chicago said they were willing to part with the second pick overall in the draft. So, I mean, that puts teams in a very interesting spot. And does that
Buffalo willing to trade their 11th pick?
Yes. Put you just outside the top 10, but still in that top 12, if that's sort of the cutoff point between the really good players in this draft and the next level. Lot of different teams sort of putting out feelers. And there's also these are professional general managers. There's a lot of deception. There's a lot of trying to see what other teams are trying to do. Just because they say something doesn't mean they're really going to do it. And it also could mean, okay, we're willing to do it, but you got to bowl us over with an offer and no team is going to meet the price that they're asking for. So every GM is sort of playing that deception game right around now.
Yeah, and I think there's also some deception games being played about who they're targeting as far as picks, right?
Yep.
If you kind of put it out there that you're looking at somebody in particular as a misdirect so that, the guy you really want will be available at the spot you want to pick, that's a whole other level as well.
That's right. And I think we will see that. I think we will see trades this year. I just do. It was unusual that there were no trades last year. And I think that the way this year is kind of shaking out with the cap going up and everything else, I think we will see some movement. Look, we know who the first pick is going to be, but who do you think goes second?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It is going to be a really tough choice for the draft picking teams in that top 5, because like if it were me, I would pick Demidov, but somebody may not want to take a chance on a Russian. I mean, that's what happened with Michkov, right?
Right.
Now, the situation is different. Obviously, he's under contract for at least one more year, I believe, in the KHL. But I think that, the potential there for him as a defenseman is huge.
Yeah. And the other thing is there are a lot of quality defensemen in the overall top 10 right now. And yet, our team's going to want to go defense. Goal scoring is at such a premium for so many teams. Do they bypass a defenseman who may be higher overall on somebody's board to try to get one of those limited goal scorers? Or do you take the best player available?
Yeah, it is interesting because this is a very deep draft for defensemen, right? But there's kind of a weird tier system here where there's the top 10 kind of defensemen, and then there's the bottom 10 of the first round kind of defensemen. There's not a lot in the middle there.
Right.
And I would say like the only guy in the middle there, defenseman wise, is maybe Carter Yakimchuk. And I think maybe Solberg. Maybe. Right? But everybody else is like divided amongst this top group and middle group. So if you're in, say, like the 10 to 16 or 11 to 18 kind of pick, and you may not have the opportunity really to pick a defenseman because the best player available by a wide margin could be 3 different forwards in there. So it is a really interesting draft in terms of the defenseman, in my opinion.
It is. And, I'm obviously looking at the New York Islanders 4 years in a row. Lou Lamoriello has traded away his first round pick. Do we go for 5 Gs here? I mean, I get the feeling.
I would hope not, for your sake.
I hope not, but I think we will see another trade of the first round pick by Lou Lamoriello. And I think that would be to the long-term detriment of the New York Islanders, maybe not the short-term detriment. Is there one team you think that definitely wants to trade up and get into the top 5 or top 10?
I don't know. I don't think that there necessarily is in terms of just wanting to get to that range. Obviously, we know that the Calgary Flames would really, really like to pick Iginla.
Yes.
And but I don't think that they can afford to trade up in order to get him. So if somebody snakes him, like they're kind of stuck with that. But I think that there's so many good players at the top end of this draft that I feel like the people already at the top feel like they're going to get somebody good and are going to hold on to those picks unless they get a huge, huge return.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that does make sense. And, I think the Blackhawks at 2 are going to be really important as far as seeing where this draft goes. They have accumulated so many picks in recent years. Do they stay at 2? Do they trade back? I think we'll learn a lot about the direction the draft is going pretty early in the evening.
Yeah, I think that is going to be like sort of who sets the tone, right? Because the first overall pick, like we know, Macklin Celebrini is going to the Sharks. So it's like, where do we go from here? The real draft starts at 2.
And then got to mention this, Utah HC going to be taking part in the draft as Utah for the first time. They have the number 6 pick as of right now. Be interesting to see. We'll see the colors and the uniform being used at an actual NHL event for the first time. And who will be that historic first pick in the history of that franchise in Utah?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting too. Some mock drafts have suggested that Zeev Bayum is going to go to Utah. And I think, being he played at Denver, the state next door, with the Avs, who have been, from a TV market perspective, the team in Salt Lake for quite some time. I think that would be an interesting move for them.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out. Should be very interesting, and going to be a heck of the next 2 weeks, I think, are going to be so intense and busy around the NHL. Can't wait to see how this all plays out. There are always surprises come draft day. Excuse me. And we will see how they play out over the course of the weekend. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. Some rules changes adopted by the NHL this year. We'll talk about that and more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and you get their lowest price guarantee. So Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time is the view from your seat. You go on the app, and before you purchase the tickets, you can see a panoramic view of the ice or the field from the app, and that way you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So, Rachel, we've got some rules changes coming down the pike. 4 changes announced on Wednesday of this week. And the first one involves a new coaches challenge that will be available. And I kind of like this rule, although it puts coaches on the hot seat.
Yeah, it is interesting because you're like, oh no, not another coach's challenge that's going to slow down the game, right? That's the first thought you have. But then you dig into it, and it's about the puck going out of play rule, which everybody is annoyed by, right? With that delay of game, because sometimes it's just an accident. It wasn't malicious. And, I think having a coach's challenge on that to see if it was intentional or just an accidental deflection to try and determine it, I think makes a lot of sense. And then, if you lose the challenge, you get another minor tacked on.
Yeah, which really could put your team in a big hole. So I would assume that this challenge would only be used if a team is pretty sure of the outcome or
pretty sure. Yeah.
2.5 minutes left in the game. You're down by a goal. You get the penalty called against you. challenge it, because you're not going to win the game unless you get a shorty the other way. But unless you're desperate or sure, or both, I don't think we're going to see too many of these challenges.
Nope, I do not think so either.
Now, they're also adding a new rule that says that a defensive team whose goaltender accidentally dislodges the net, they will no longer be able to make a line change after that. And I kind of like this rule as well.
Yeah, I do too, because it seemed kind of ridiculous that it only applied to skaters and not the goalie when it's the same exact thing happening.
Right.
You know, and it allowed the goaltenders to, I'm air quoting here, accidentally dislodge the net, you know? And
yeah.
I just don't think that there should have been a difference between goalies and skaters for this case. So I'm for it.
Yeah, no, I am for it too. And again, hopefully it just reduces the number of times that goalies do that. And, it could be a delay of game penalty also if you do that, depending on how it's done and how deliberate it appears.
Right.
Another rules change in the wake of an icing. The center on offense will now also receive one warning, just like the defensive player, as far as faceoff violations are concerned.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer too. It's just making things fair, because
Right.
a face-off violation is a face-off violation. It doesn't matter which end of the ice you're facing.
I mean, I guess the logic of not doing it that way is that the defensive team committed the icing, so they're penalized a little bit. But I like the fairness aspect of this more than I
Yeah.
think the punitive aspect of the other way.
Maybe save some guys' wrists in the meantime.
Absolutely. And the last rules change that was announced, and this is going to be interesting. With the new rule, an official will provide the offending team's coach and players with one warning about players sitting on the boards. And if they keep sitting on the boards, there will be a bench minor penalty. I don't know whether they'll call it delay of game or unsportsmanlike conduct, but trying to get those players off the boards. And that to me is a safety issue more than anything else.
Yeah, that's entirely what this is. And so it does make sense. I think it's going to take a little bit of getting used to for the players, because they're used to kind of dangling on the boards there, until the last possible second. But, you got to be on the bench. If you're on the bench, you should be on the bench. And if you're on the ice, you're on the ice,
Yep. Yeah, it makes sense. And I think there will be an adjustment period in preseason and maybe early in the regular season. But just like anything else, they'll get used to it. And I think it'll clean things up a little bit and hopefully prevent either an injury or a controversy and all of that. So overall, I think these were logical rules changes, and we'll see how they go once the season gets underway. But we are now officially in the off season, and the next couple of weeks going to be vital around this league.
Is it October yet?
Yeah, summer's just starting and we're already looking forward to fall. Look at that. How hockey can we get? All right. Well, that is going to do it for us today. I will be back on Monday talking to three of our local hosts about some of the biggest stories from around the league. I'm sure there'll be some big surprises at the draft, some trades perhaps. So we'll have that all covered for you then. Until then, we'll have also some great coverage on draft day. So check out Locked On NHL for that, with all of our local hosts weighing in and our draft experts weighing in on the picks. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the draft. And thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.